As a lifelong Pokemon fan and collector of nearly every aspect of the franchise, the video games obviously play a major role in it all, from humble handheld beginnings to multiple varied console experiences. While Pokemon's mainline series of games now reside on console, that can double as a handheld, Pokemon has had plenty of spin-off games that were pure console-based experiences, from fighting games to mini-games to full-on journeys within the world of Pokemon. It's easy to lose track of just how many other ways to enjoy the gaming side of Pokemon there are. Now, to add on to that, a lot of these games, specifically the ones that have released on the Nintendo Wii and GameCube, also have the hindrance of being less available, and when you do find them, they hold a pretty penny in value. But the benefit you get from buying something like Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness is that there is a full GameCube Pokemon adventure here. It's still something beyond the value of the purchase that makes the price point feel a bit more bearable and coughing it up. But what if I told you the most expensive Pokemon video game in general isn't even a game at all? Today, let's take a look at the ridiculously expensive Pokemon quote-unquote game that was released for the Nintendo GameCube. This is the story of Pokemon Box Ruby and Sapphire. Now, there are some stipulations to mention as to why Pokemon Box is the most expensive. When we look at certain bundles that contain regular games you can buy separately from the bundles that make them more expensive, they don't really count versus a standalone game like Pokemon Box being worth more. By that I mean stuff like the Nintendo 64 Pokemon Stadium Battle Set bundle, which was a release of the Nintendo 64 that came with a regular copy of Pokemon Battle Stadium, but was just bundled with the console, a controller, expansion pack, and more. Or something like the Walmart exclusive Pokemon Heart Gold or Soul Silver bundles, which come with the base game and Pokewalker, and on its own that is worth quite a bit, but here it was bundled with an exclusive Pokewalker jacket sleeve to put on your Pokewalker, but also it came with either the Ho-Oh figure or the Lugia figure, which were pre-order bonuses originally at GameStop. We are solely looking at the value of a game by itself. On May 30th, 2003, Pokemon Box was originally released in Japan, offering the same experience as the North American version would, but it would never reach the heights of said North American version, and there was a clear initial reason why. Over a year later, on July 11, 2004, the North American version would officially release, but only through one retail store, and by that I mean one singular location, as there is only one of them in the United States, the Pokemon Center in New York City, which would later just become the Nintendo store. It was also available through Nintendo's website for a brief amount of time as well, until the remodeling of the Pokemon Center into Nintendo World happened in early 2005. There you would have the option of two versions of the game, one that would just be the game and the memory card, and another that came inside a bit larger of a box, which would include the transfer link cable that would connect your Game Boy Advance to the GameCube. I don't put this version listed as a bundle like the other items, as this item was necessary to use the game's features if you don't already have the cable separately. Included in either version was the memory card, a cool Ruby and Sapphire themed 59 blocks of space memory card that would have a cool sticker. Mine does not have the cool sticker, stop laughing at me. Pokemon knew that this game would be less of an importance to most gamers out there and be a smaller add-on for those who are seeking it out, meaning it didn't have a large rollout, especially in the United States, hence why it was only available in one place in the States. Worldwide, this game would sell 280,000 copies, which is still quite the amount of copies. Sure, it didn't sell millions and every Pokemon player didn't purchase one, but here's why the US release of the game is the one that is worth so much. Let's see out of the sales numbers how many of them were the Japanese version. Yeah, that leaves the sales in the US to 10,000 copies. Hopefully the bigger picture is starting to take shape here, because I didn't mention that the game in English also released for Europe, and that 10,000 total sold of the English version accounts for sales in the EU as well, cutting the actual number even further for the US specific sales.
GameCube.
So what is Pokemon Box? What makes it so special? Because like the title of this video claims, this isn't even a game. Which is true because it's not. The game, which I will still call a game because it's easier to say, is basically just an expanded upon storage unit for your Pokemon, a way to house them outside of Ruby and Sapphire. This is a concept we would see many times over from Pokemon later in more digital ways like Pokemon Bank and Pokemon Home. or the one on the Wii, My Pokemon Ranch, which had all this fun stuff that you can do with these chibi and more polygonal designs for your Pokemon. Man, I haven't checked on My Pokemon Ranch in so long. I guarantee I left so many Pokemon there as they waste away into digital dust, but I'm not going to set my Wii back up and go check. So let's just leave it as my own personal Schrodinger's Pokemon Ranch, if you please. Inside of the game itself, you'll meet Bridget, a character from the Hoenn region who acts as your guide to the storage unit. She would also make a return to this storage unit position later on as the host of Pokemon Bank. She is the older sister of Lynette, who upgraded the box system for Pokemon within the games themselves to have a better, more user-friendly interface, adding wallpapers and greater space limitations. When it comes to the storage features in Pokemon Box, it sure lives up to its name. There sure are boxes, and you sure can store Pokemon in them. So outside of that, what's the point in this? Well, you can also make stages in the showcase mode where you choose a landscape and place these signs with the images of Pokemon on them over the spots available. It's a feature that can sometimes come out looking pretty cool in efforts to display all of your Pokemon, but there really is no point to this. In fact, you can even place the same Pokemon plaque over and over again for the reasons of why not? Luckily, there was a pretty cool, albeit a little extreme at parts, extra for those who use the storage features. Bonus eggs. Bonus eggs would be the incentive to fill up the 25 boxes the game has. Now, when you start off, you can see it is pretty straightforward and easy to hit the numbers required in the storage to unlock these bonus eggs. You'll receive the first egg simply by playing the game. Well, just turning it on and using the storage features. This egg will hatch into a level 5 Swablu that immediately knows False Swipe. The next egg you would receive for storing your first 100 Pokemon and would be a level 5 Zigzagoon that knows Extreme Speed. From here, things would start to get a bit trickier if you want the final 2 eggs. For the third egg, you need to deposit 500 Pokemon in total, which would grant you a level 5 Skitty that knows Payday. But 500 is a pretty big number, with Ruby and Sapphire only offering a total of 386 Pokemon. I say only for the comparison of needing 500 Pokemon to obtain the egg, so you'll be needing plenty of doubles of Pokemon in order to hit that limit. But for the last egg, you'll need to have the will of a true Pokemon master. To get the fourth and final egg, which hatches into a level 5 Pichu that funny enough knows Surf, you'll need to max out the complete storage capabilities of every box. So with 25 boxes that can hold 60 Pokemon each, you'll need to fill them up with a total of 1,499 Pokemon. That final 1,500th slot would be reserved for the Pichu egg. Now, that Pichu is really cool and can feel rewarding to unlock it, but it's going to take you some time as Pokemon games back then weren't as Pokemon catching happy as they may feel now, so be prepared to play for quite some time to accomplish this. But there has to be something here, right? This can't just be a storage unit, right? Well, on the main menu screen you do have a second option, and that being you can connect your Game Boy Advance like you would for the storage, but now it essentially emulates your Ruby or Sapphire game through the GameCube and onto your TV. And back then it was the cheapest way to do so instead of purchasing the Game Boy Advance player add-on. But the problem with this is that it can only play Ruby and Sapphire. No other games or even any future Pokemon games that would come next, like Fire Red and Leaf Green or Emerald version. The Game Boy Advance player would let you play any game, including Ruby and Sapphire. In both ways, it makes sense, but also makes you question why these limitations. However, you could use Emerald, Fire Red, and Leaf Green to aid in your storage of Pokemon. Those other 3 games can all connect to Pokemon Box for the storage features only, but not as a way to play the games. It does play well with the game itself, and even giving you an option to take some screenshots, but outside of that, you'd probably rather use the Game Boy Advance player since it can play anything, and was mass-produced and you can find it pretty much anywhere games are sold, and not through one location in one specific city. Now, just looking at the packaging, seeing Ruby and Sapphire on there, you wouldn't be too far off of assuming that this would be a full-fledged Pokemon game of sorts. To clarify any confusion to consumers who think otherwise, they slapped Pokemon Organizer in the corner of the cover. I wouldn't know the difference. All I remember is thinking that this was an actual GameCube game when I was a kid, and always wondered why myself or my friends could never get our hands on a copy of it. Obviously, now I know based on where they sold it at, but still, it was a bummer knowing that it existed, even if I was ignorant to what the game even was.
Game Boy Advance to GameCube. Pokemon Box.
In recent years, the GameCube's library of games have risen exponentially. As generations of video games get older and older, a certain value starts accruing, and on top of that, the more rare or more obscure of a game you are, the more value growth you have. So in a case like Pokemon Box, where it's less of a game and more of just a place to hold more of your Pokemon, it initially didn't have most people's interest when it first came out, and most people couldn't even get their hands on them either. Fast forward to Pokemon being what it is today and how many people are in the hobby, how many people are Pokemon collectors, and nostalgia being one heck of a chokehold on some. I mean, I have 2 channels all about nostalgia. It can make something as limited as this skyrocket to the top of people's wants. Also, for just purely video game collectors and those seeking to collect for the GameCube, make it pretty scarce to come by in general. Not everyone is going to be able to get their hands on a copy of Pokemon Box, and if you are lucky enough to come across one, it's not cheap. What makes it even harder for people to get their hands on a US copy of Pokemon Box is the fact that over time, stuff like people scratching or ruining discs have occurred. Couple that with a thing called disc rot, a thing that can happen over time to optical discs, making them essentially deteriorate due to chemical or physical effects. Because of that, it has led people to believe that only around 1,000 copies of Pokemon Box in the US are out there, which takes our limited numbers already and makes them so much more so. If you were ahead of this massive rise in value when we're able to find one in the wild or through places like eBay from 2012 to 2018, you could find the game complete in box for under $300 roughly. After this point, the game would explode in value, now peaking around $1,500 to $1,600 on average for a complete in-box version of the game. That's just the standard version, however. The big box version of the game with the cable inside hovers between $2,500 to $3,000 in a complete in-box state. And all that's different is the bigger outer box and the cable itself. Now, if you were looking directly at getting a brand new sealed version of either or for your collection, you're immediately looking at $4,500 for the base game itself and $3,800 for the big box version. Sales for that version are just rare to come by and haven't had as many sales as the standard version has, hence the weird price difference. Which is just odd to see, but welcome to the value of where the rules are made up and the points are worth everything in your bank account. You know, it's funny when you think about it. You have to empty your bank in order to fill your Pokemon bank. Anyway, Pokemon Box is a funny case of a game not really being a game, released at a limited capacity through one small source that propelled it into being one of the rarest GameCube games ever released, and on top of that, the most expensive Pokemon game out there, which only seems to be holding its value or going up for the most part. Maybe one day the price could come down a bit, but that's never a guarantee, especially with the amount of collectors after it and the small number of copies available. Or you could be smart, unlike me, and go for the PAL or Japanese version of the game and acquire them in a much cheaper entry price, because at the end of the day, you're really paying for nothing more than getting the worthless bragging rights of owning it. Hey, did you know about Pokemon Box growing up? Would you pay today's high prices for it even though there's nothing truly amazing it offers? Or maybe you were one of the lucky original batch of people who went to the Pokemon Center in New York City and picked one up. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe with notifications on for more content like this. Click the join button, become a member to help support the channel. Follow me on Twitter, and I'll be back soon with another video, but until then, later.